Let's do this. Okay, let's find a new rerouting. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is John Tapp with the Kenworth T800 with the 500 XP HP Cummins X15 SA and a 18 speed transmission. We're gonna start. We're gonna start with onions
Keep
and
right, and then exit right.
for Washington. So
Exit right.
so let's go for a ride for the rest of this morning.
ready to roll.
This programming is sponsored by Metro. World Cup planning includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now.
Grader Logan Bailey finished in the top 5 before missing a word.
Quinkatoo. Q-U-I-N-K-E-T-U-B-E. Quinkatoo.
That audio is courtesy of the Scripps National Spelling Bee. 13-year-old Avishka Dudala from Prosper finished in 6th place. I'm Matt Harrod in the Texas Newsroom.
You're listening to statewide news from public radio stations across Texas. This coverage is only possible because of support from listeners like you. You can help sustain and grow Texas news coverage by donating to your local public radio station today.
I'm Ernie Manous on the next Hello Houston. The Houston Airport System's Jim Sesniak will join us to discuss changes at the airport and the busy summer travel season. Then, Nerdtropolis founder Sean Tajapour will break down the upcoming summer movie season. And we'll also have our regular Friday feature, Last Minute Plans, our rundown of all the weekend events going on in H-Town. It's Hello Houston, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. weekdays here on News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from Raymond James, where wealth management, banking, and capital market strategies start with connections between people. Raymond James, the power of personal. Disclosures at raymondjames.com. From Jarl and Pamela Lamone, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts. And from the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people at wtgrantfdn.org.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Steve Inskeep.
I'm E. Martinez.
And I'm Layla Faldin. Can Texas shift blue? Democrat James Tellerico believes he can flip the Senate seat in the typically deep red state in November. The Texas state representative is running against the Trump-endorsed state attorney general Ken Paxton, who ousted incumbent Senator John Cornyn in the Republican primary this week. Paxton is, to put it mildly, controversial. He was impeached by the Texas House, accused of bribery and abuse of office. He faced down felony fraud charges and is accused of extramarital affairs. Paxton says he's the victim of political smear campaigns. Tellerico and his party believe those scandals give the Democrat an edge.
The most corrupt politician in America just became the Republican nominee for the United States Senate. That kind of corruption is the rot at the core of this whole broken system. It's why we can't afford anything. It's why we can't get ahead, no matter how hard we work. Because for 50 years, billionaire mega donors and their puppet politicians like Ken Paxton have been rigging the rules of this economy against us.
You know, Ken Paxton won and then wasted no time coming up with taunting, in many cases anti-LGBTQ nicknames for you. Six-gender Jimmy, James Telefrico, Tofu Tallarico, as his way of denouncing your positions on gender-affirming care, immigration, energy, religion. What do you make of these insults?
Well, we just announced last night that we have I'm a Talafrico t-shirts available on our website for purchase, jamestalarico.com for all the Talafricos out there. We're
so there's merch from
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. So, we're running against this politics. I think we're all tired of these old dudes who are pretending like this is professional wrestling, all slathered up and throwing these silly nicknames at each other. Like these nicknames don't lower the price of groceries. They don't lower the price of gas. They don't lower the cost of housing and childcare and prescription drugs.
Well, that's true, but they were an effective mechanism for President Trump. He would name his political opponents a nickname. It would stick. It did seem to be an effective way of going after his political opponents. You feel that's different now? I mean, because it's beyond Paxton, right? We saw Stephen Miller post this anti-trans post about you.
Yeah, I actually disagree. The President Trump, in both of his elections, won with razor-thin margins, certainly not mandates. And both of those, I think, were motivated by a dissatisfaction with the economy. And so I think sometimes these nicknames got the credit for these victories, when really it was people fed up with a broken system. And so many people who voted for Donald Trump in 2024 here in Texas, they didn't vote for him because of the nicknames. They actually hated that kind of stuff. They hated the way he talked to people, but they thought that he could lower costs. They thought he could get the economy back on track as a businessman. They thought that he was going to drain the swamp. They thought he was going to end the forever wars. They thought he was going to release the Epstein files. A little over a year into this administration, the president has failed on all four counts. I think we have a real opportunity to extend an open hand to our family members, our friends, our neighbors who voted for Donald Trump because they put their faith in him for valid reasons. And that, I think, is what's going to make the difference in this race. I really don't think it's the taunting and the name-calling.
You said that you're willing to break with your Democratic colleagues on issues that matter to Texans. What are those issues?
Well, I got some heat in my own party for calling out President Biden for failing to secure our southern border. I'm a border security Democrat. My family is from South Texas. My mom grew up in Laredo on our southern border. And I know that those federal policies during the Biden administration created chaos in our border communities. And so I am putting forward a comprehensive vision for how we transform this broken immigration system. Securing the border, adding more border patrol, modernizing our ports of entry so we can stop the flow of fentanyl into our communities, and also welcoming hardworking immigrants who want to make this country richer and stronger, as immigrants always have.
What do you think about ICE? Because some of the more progressive candidates in your party want to see it abolished.
Well, I want to put an end to this secret police force, and I want to rebuild an agency that's actually focused on immigration and customs enforcement. And that's not what's happening here. I do want immigration and customs enforcement. I believe in public safety. I think public safety is the most important thing that the government does. But this secret police force of masked men in unmarked vehicles terrorizing our hardworking neighbors is not keeping any of us safe. And I think people are ready for someone who's going to tackle this broken immigration system with the seriousness that it deserves.
That's Texas State Democratic Representative James Talarico, the Democratic nominee for Senate in Texas. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
We've asked Talarico's opponent, Ken Paxton, for an interview and comment. We have not heard back.
The Scripps National Spelling Bee ended with 2 finalists in a rapid-fire spell-off. 8th grader Shrey Parikh set a record to take home the trophy. We have a report from NPR's Rachel Treisman. That's Treisman.
Nearly 250 spellers arrived in D.C. for Bee Week, but only 9 made it to Thursday's final. By the end of the night, only 2 were left, and officials needed a quick decider. So they hauled out a big silver buzzer, prompting gasps from the crowd and a pit in 14-year-old Shrey Parikh's stomach.
I calmed my mind, I got some water, and I just tried to take it all in stride and do the best I could.
Each contestant had 90 seconds to spell as many of the provided words as possible. Parikh crushed 32. That's a record for the spell-off, which has been used 3 times since its debut in 2021. Parikh won over $50,000 in cash, among other perks. This is the California native's 3rd bee, after placing 89th and then 3rd in recent years.
I would say definitely just keep trying, because trying is the best thing you can do, and it's the most important thing you can do.
This is the first time in 15 years that the spelling bee was held in D.C., where it started over a century ago. The final took place at a concert hall not far from the White House, packed with family members, supporters, and some curious locals.
Oh my God, it is actually really exciting.
Maryland resident Christy Kim got the bug after watching a county-level spelling bee in her area. She loved it so much she brought a friend to D.C. for the final.
It feels very tense, but in a good way, because you're at the edge of your seat hoping they get every single letter right. And
several of the spellers in the crowd, eliminated from earlier rounds, told NPR they were just happy to have reached this level. The younger ones hope they'll get the chance to come back next year, and spectators like Kim feel the same.
We honestly might be bee people now.
But Parikh won't be competing, which he says leaves him about 5 new free hours every day, ideally for tennis and math competitions. Rachel Treisman, NPR News.
842, it's News 88.7. Good morning. Over 2.5 hours now, the 18-wheeler car fire carrier, and that is on the East Tex Freeway inbound Lee Road in 3 right lanes, heavy in that area.
Do you spend enough time with your kids? This week on It's Been a Minute, I'm getting into the discourse around moms who spend 3 hours max with their kids per weekend day.
And on Wildcard, musician Noah Kahn opens up about mental health.
I think depression and anxiety give you sneaky superpowers in a lot of ways, like the power of understanding and sympathizing.
That's on Wildcard, and It's Been a Minute from NPR.
Tomorrow night at 6.
Support comes from Metro. World Cup planning includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now.
Support comes from the Museum of Fine Arts Houston. Organic forms, vibrant colors, and playful spontaneity shape Henri Matisse's vegetable elements. This and others in masterpieces from the Museum Berggruen. Now on view. Info at mfah.org.
Good morning, I'm Laura Kane at the BBC. The head of the World Health Organization is appealing for more funding to help contain the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Speaking in the capital, Kinshasa, he said only a third of the needed support has been secured. The BBC's Barbara Pletasha.
Dr. Tedros has been sending messages of reassurance and solidarity, telling Congolese people they are not alone. He and other health officials have said they are still trying to catch up with a rare species of the Ebola virus that spread undetected for weeks, probably months, in a remote area where dozens of armed groups have operated for decades.
The former head of the Chinese temple, known as the birthplace of Kung Fu, has been sentenced to 24 years in jail after being convicted of crimes including embezzlement and taking bribes. Shu Yongxin, the former abbot of the Shaolin temple, was disrobed then arrested last year after being accused of misappropriating temple assets. Wildlife officials in Western India have put several Asiatic lions under quarantine after 7 animals died in a suspected virus outbreak. Preliminary investigation shows the deaths could have occurred due to Babesia infection, which is transmitted by ticks. Ambarasan Ethirajan reports.
Gir Wildlife Sanctuary and its surrounding areas are home to nearly 900 Asiatic lions. This reserve in Western India is the last remaining home for this endangered species, which once roamed from the Middle East to East Asia.
I'm Laura Kane at the BBC in London.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Clarivate. Clarivate is working with librarians to examine how core workflows in academic libraries are being reshaped by AI. The study can be viewed at clarivate.com. From FJC, a foundation of donor-advised funds, working to maximize the impact of charitable giving and to create customized philanthropic solutions. Learn more at fjc.org. And from the sustaining members of this NPR station.
Good morning. You are listening to Morning Edition here on News 88.7. I'm Matt Harrop. We continue now with News 88.7 in depth. Ahead of the FIFA World Cup starting on June 11th, the Democratic Republic of Congo's national soccer team will be based in Houston for much of the tournament. But an Ebola outbreak in their home country could keep some fans from traveling to see them. News 88.7's Michael Atkinson reports.
It's words that have never been spoken before. DR Congo is going to the World Cup.
Get
The minute, and I'm not even kidding you, the minute that they qualified, my wife and I went online and secured tickets.
Chunsa Kalubi is a Houstonian and a member of the Congolese diaspora.
Just seeing that Congolese flag and knowing that it's going to be represented on the world's biggest stage, I have never experienced anything like this.
The Democratic Republic of Congo had never qualified for the World Cup before this year. Now, they're playing their first match ever in Houston on June 17th. But an outbreak of the deadly Ebola virus in the Central African country could inhibit some of those plans. The World Health Organization has labeled this an epidemic. Officials have confirmed 121 cases and 17 deaths, but doctors say the real total could be far higher. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has implemented travel restrictions on people coming from DR Congo, preventing non-citizens and some green card holders from entering the U.S. U.S. citizens coming from Congo still can return but will face increased health screenings. The restrictions last for at least 30 days, meaning some Congolese soccer fans traveling internationally may not be able to arrive to go to the match in Houston. Here's Kalubi again.
We've got, our happiest moment, in the World Cup, and unfortunately it's going to be counterbalanced by, this outbreak of Ebola.
Today, the team, called the Leopards, is ranked by FIFA as 46th in the world. Even to qualify, though, is a massive achievement for their fans.
Oh, it means everything.
Marcus Mbwo is a Houstonian, born and raised in Congo.
So me seeing them live here at home will probably never happen again in my whole lifetime. So maybe not even in my kids' lifetime. It's really a once-in-a-lifetime chance.
And the team selected Houston as their base camp to live and practice in during much of the tournament.
They're super excited to come to Houston.
Chris Canetti is president of Houston's World Cup host committee.
And we're ready to welcome them with open arms and give them a great Houston experience.
They'll practice at SaberCats Stadium, about 10 miles south of downtown Houston. John Coppins is vice president of operations for the host committee.
There's a gym facility on site. There's a full catering kitchen and concessions on site if they decided to do team meals here. Locker room facilities, team treatment areas.
But the team will stay at a hotel near the Galleria.
They mentioned they're bringing a couple chefs with the team who will be at the hotel.
The team will play a few warm-up matches in Europe in early June before coming to the U.S. Those matches are moving forward, and the U.S. will allow the Congolese team into the country, according to the Associated Press. Both FIFA and Houston's World Cup host committee have said they're monitoring the outbreak. As a result, the Ebola outbreak will almost undoubtedly impact the Congolese experience with the 2026 World Cup. Here's Chunsa Kalubi again.
For people in the diaspora, seeing our soccer team come and compete is an immense joy for us. What we feel here in the diaspora is multiplied, times 10 on the streets of Kinshasa and all throughout the country. So I'm sure people are devastated if they're not able to travel.
For News 88.7 In Depth, I'm Michael Atkinson.
It's about 8:50 here at News 88.7. Good morning. 3 hours now. The cleanup continues with the 18-wheeler car carrier fire. The East Tex Freeway inbound 69 past Lee Road in 3 right lanes. That's why you're backed up towards Will Clayton. It was back towards the 1960 area, so it's not as bad because you're getting towards the end of rush hour. I have eyes on that. I'll let you know when that's gone. Sunny 91 for the high, staying in the low 90s for the weekend. Sunshine continues, but rain starting Monday going into Tuesday. Could be most of the week. We'll see 76 right now, 10 minutes away from Houston Matters. Kurt Cohen is here. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Ooh,
we made it.
Yeah, we did. It was a shorter week, but that's nice.
Yeah, I was just talking with Jim Kovacic, the executive producer of Hello Houston, about how the shortened weeks where you have a holiday on a Monday and a 4-day week like this, somehow the week seems longer. I don't know if it's that we're consolidating a certain tonnage of work into those 4 days that we normally spread out over 5 or whatever the case may be, but it's felt like a longer week, which is odd.
Well, maybe for you because you actually work for a living.
Well,
unlike me. Did I say that out loud? Anyone listening?
You're working pretty hard.
Oh, okay.
I've noticed.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Coming up on Houston Matters this morning, we're going to talk with Houston area Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher. She says the president suing his government, appointing his lawyer to head the DOJ, then settling the suit for what she calls a slush fund is a perversion of our system of justice. It's why she's introduced a bill in Congress to outlaw this and all future presidents from essentially doing what the president's doing. We'll talk with her about it. Welcome your questions as well. We'll have this week's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and the latest installment of the Movies Houstonians Love series. It's all ahead on Houston Matters in 9 minutes.
Markets are staying optimistic despite all the geopolitical uncertainty.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business. With smart business buying, AI tools help to optimize user experience for purchases, paired with delivery options built for business. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com. And by The Economist, offering global reporting and analysis on politics, economics, and world affairs. More information at economist.com.
From Marketplace, I'm Nova Safo. Good morning. Markets are in wait-and-see mode this morning as President Trump considers whether to approve a 60-day ceasefire extension agreement with Iran. It calls for reopening the Strait of Hormuz, while negotiations continue on thorny issues such as the fate of Iran's nuclear program. But despite all the geopolitical turmoil, the S&P 500 is on track for its 9th consecutive weekly gain. Joining me now to explain why is Russ Mould at the UK-based investment platform AJ Bell. Russ, good morning.
Good day to you, Nova. Hope all is well.
Thank you. Inflation is heating up. Energy prices are well above pre-war levels, and yet stocks on Wall Street, at least, and please enlighten me about Europe, are doing quite well, thank you. Why is that?
I think there are a number of reasons. The first one is markets, rightly or wrongly, remain convinced that the 8th of April ceasefire between Washington and Tehran meant that the escalation phase was over and the de-escalation phase would begin, and that the result of that would ultimately be a peace deal on hopefully humanitarian grounds, but also from the selfish perspective of financial markets, something that would help global trade flows, get the oil price back down. Secondly, there's no doubt that quarterly earnings season has been extremely strong. Positive surprises outweighed negative ones. Earnings momentum looks extremely powerful at the moment. And the third one, the US market continues to get this tailwind from the artificial intelligence tech trade.
And are certain sectors, aside from AI, the main AI companies, what are some of the other sectors on Wall Street and in Europe that you're seeing kind of really pop right now?
You have seen a little bit more breadth in the past week or two. Financials have been hanging in there, but healthcare has started to join the party a little bit. So what that is actually what you want to see, to have real confidence that we're not in some sort of mad final melt-up stage. You would like to see more breadth in the market, more sectors, more stocks joining in.
Russ Mould at AJ Bell in London. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And let's do the numbers. The Dow Industrial is up 200 points now, 0.4%. The S&P 500 index is up 0.4% as well. The Nasdaq Composite Index up 0.3%. Brent crude futures are down nearly 2% at $92 per barrel. The 10-year Treasury yield is down marginally at 4.45%. The Commerce Department says the personal savings rate fell sharply last month as consumers dip into their nest eggs to handle rising prices. Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer explains.
Last month, the personal savings rate, that is, how much of our income we have left after expenses and taxes, it plummeted to 2.6%, about half what it was a year ago, and the lowest rate since June of 2022. We had been relying on higher tax refunds to deal with soaring prices for things like gas and food, but that cash cushion is running out for some of us, and we're taking money out of our savings to pay for necessities. We're also borrowing more. A new NerdWallet survey says more than a third of Americans are relying on credit to cover their expenses. This consumer cash crunch has wider implications. If you're taking money out of your savings account, your bank has less cash to lend, maybe to a business looking to expand. I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer for Marketplace. Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Schwab. With the Schwab Teen Investor account, teens can gain hands-on investing experience. It's co-owned by parents and teens, so parents can monitor the account while teens learn how to invest and manage money. More at schwab.com. And by Million Bazillion, a Webby-winning podcast from Marketplace, teaches your little ones all about money. Listen to Million Bazillion wherever you get your podcasts.
The luxury brand Ferrari unveiled its first ever electric car this week. The price tag, $640,000 to start. At the opposite end of the price spectrum is the Jeff Bezos-backed Slate EV, set to debut later this year. It's one of a growing number of cheaper electric vehicles coming to market. Marketplace's Henry Epp has more.
The idea behind Slate is to offer a super bare-bones EV in order to sell it as cheaply as possible. The base model is a two-door pickup, says Sam Abu-El-Samad at the market research firm Telemetry.
It has manual crank windows, there's no infotainment system, it has air conditioning, but that's literally about it.
The outside of the base model is just unpainted gray plastic. Starting price in the mid-$20,000 range. The idea is that customers will be able to add features and customize the vehicle as much as they want.
You can add a second row of seats. You can get a cover for the bed area that turns it into a small SUV.
The truck was first announced last year when $7,500 federal tax credits for EVs were still in place, which would have dropped the price under $20,000. But the GOP Congress took that tax credit away last fall, and that could make the Slate a tougher sell.
By the time you add all the pieces that you need to make it into an SUV, you're probably going to be looking at a price point somewhere between $30,000 and $35,000.
And for that much, you could buy a hybrid Toyota RAV4 or Honda CR-V, or you could buy a growing number of new fully electric models. Chevrolet, Nissan, Toyota, and Subaru have all recently launched new EVs around that price range. Ford plans to offer an electric truck around $30,000 next year, too. And that's a change from the kinds of EVs offered in recent years, says Stephanie Brindley at S&P Global Mobility.
It's been more concentrated in the mid to higher end of vehicles.
But as car makers have gotten more familiar with EV technology, they're now bringing it to other segments of the market.
If EVs are going to be a larger part of the U.S. marketplace, they have to be available at different price points. They have to be available at different sizes and different brands.
And car makers have to compete with a growing threat to their business. Cheap EVs from China, says John Halveston at George Washington University.
All of the automakers are aware that the leaders in the world right now are Chinese brands, and that their cars are very performant and with very low prices.
Those brands aren't yet in the U.S. thanks to high tariffs and import restrictions, but they're getting closer.
They're on our doorstep. They're being sold in Canada, they're being sold in Mexico, and they're being sold all over the world.
And Halveston says car companies know they have to step up their affordable EV game to compete. I'm Henry Epp for Marketplace.
And I'm Nova Sapo with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
Trustworthy news is why you tune in every day. Become a new member by Friday, and you'll help us unlock $10,000. That goes right back into the station that you rely on. You can do that at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
8:59 here, News 88.7. Good morning. Over 3 hours now. Clean up from the 18-wheeler car carrier fire, East Texas Freeway, inbound 69 past Lee Road. They're sitting in a couple of right lanes. That's why you're seeing delays trying to get into the Houston area from Humboldt. Sunshine 91 for the high, mid-70s for the low tonight. Staying in the low 90s for the weekend. Some sun, some clouds, and rain kicking in next week. Right now, 77 Cypress, 76 here at the University of Houston. Streaming live online at houstonpublicmedia.org on the app, as well as KUHF Houston News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 9 o'clock.
Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher says President Trump suing his government, appointing his lawyer to head the DOJ, then settling the suit for what she calls a slush fund is a perversion of our system of justice. I'm Craig Cohen. Today on Houston Matters, the Congresswoman explains what she wants to do about it.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is a production of Houston Public Media with support from Baylor College of Medicine.
Also this hour, we preview the latest installment in the Museum of Fine Arts Houston's Movies Houstonians Love series. We talk with Houstonian Harold Taylor about his selection of Hal Hartley's 1989 dramedy, The Unbelievable Truth. Plus, from FIFA under investigation for its sales practices ahead of the World Cup to Houston billionaire Tillman Fertitta's company poised to purchase Caesar's Palace, we contemplate intrigues in the news on the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll start with a news update from NPR and News 88.7. Stay with us.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. A federal judge has temporarily blocked the Justice Department from paying out any money from a new $1.8 billion fund. President Trump says this would go to anyone who claims they were targeted by the agency. Critics have said it's a slush fund that could pay money to rioters who assaulted police during the January 6th attack. Former U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is set to testify in a closed-door hearing before members of Congress today. She's to answer questions about her handling of files belonging to late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. NPR's Ava Berger reports.
The Republican-led House Oversight Committee is expected to question Bondi about how she handled the release of millions of documents. Critics have said the process was sloppy and revealed the personal information of some survivors. Bondi was ousted from the Justice Department's top job in April. Some Epstein survivors, like Danny Bensky, are frustrated that the hearing will be behind closed doors, not videotaped.
It should be transcribed, it should be filmed, and it should be publicly released as quickly as possible.
Bondi joins a growing list of high-profile people the committee has questioned about Epstein, including former President Bill Clinton and current Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Ava Berger, NPR News.
Stocks opened higher this morning as crude oil prices inched down. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Dow Jones Industrials are up 180 points.
Speculators in futures markets are betting that oil will soon start flowing again through the Strait of Hormuz, but businesses that actually use oil say falling futures prices don't reflect the actual risk to supplies. ExxonMobil warned this week that physical stockpiles of oil are approaching record low levels, and unless they're replenished, oil prices could spike again in the coming weeks. AAA says retail gasoline prices in the U.S. dipped about 3 cents a gallon overnight, but the average price of $4.39 is still about $1.40 higher than before the U.S. launched its war with Iran. The U.S. trade deficit narrowed slightly last month. The Commerce Department says exports and imports both increased in April, but exports grew more. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
A rocket belonging to Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin company exploded during a test yesterday. NPR's William Jones reports.
The failed test on Thursday night at Cape Canaveral saw the night sky painted orange. Video footage shows the rocket on the pad, and then seconds later a large fireball erupts. Homes nearby were left shaking. Blue Origin said that the rocket, which is called New Glenn, exploded during an engine firing test. That test was being conducted ahead of a planned satellite launch next week. Posting on X, Jeff Bezos, who founded Blue Origin, said it's too early to know the cause. He said it's been a rough day, but the team would get back to rebuilding and flying. Nobody was hurt, and local officials say there's no threat from fumes. William Jones, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Joyce Foundation, committed to advancing racial equity and economic mobility for the next generation in the Great Lakes region. Learn more at joycefdn.org. This is NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Matt Harrop. One person is in the hospital right now after an accident involving a Houston Metro bus this morning. This happened around 6:30 a.m. right around Aldine Bender Road, north of the Metro area. There was significant damage left to the Metro bus, according to ABC 13. Metro officials say the bus was making a stop when a second vehicle hit it from behind. Nobody was injured on the bus. It's the person in that other car that's currently in the hospital. Meanwhile, crews used a ladder truck to rescue 8 students stuck on a roller coaster high over Pleasure Pier in Galveston. The ride malfunctioned early yesterday evening. Crews got the last person off the ride about 4 hours later. Galveston Fire Chief Mike Varela says none of the riders had injuries, though.
Of course, they were shaken up from climbing that ladder down, being in that hot sun. They have been checked for dehydration, and everyone seems to be doing pretty good.
Varela says they don't know yet why the ride stopped. Houston ISD students were on the island as part of an end-of-year senior trip. And the developer of a controversial development proposed for Galveston Island pulled a hearing on the item for this week's City Council agenda. Here's our Juliana Washburn.
The decision to delay the hearing on the Discovery Sands development came after residents raised some concerns. They were worried about Galveston City Council taking up the subject before new members were seated. 2 council seats are still up for runoffs in June. Kristen Dillman lives near the location of the proposed Discovery Sands development. She says she was relieved when she heard about the delay.
Because that means we have more time to fight it and to get other factions and organizations organizations involved with this development?
The Discovery Sands development would span 170 acres with hundreds of housing units, a lagoon pool, and a lazy river. Galveston City Council will consider the proposal at a June 25th meeting. From the Galveston County Bureau, I'm Juliana Washburn, News 88.7.
And the Astros hot streak continued yesterday. They beat the Texas Rangers 5-1, and they end up taking 3 out of 4 games in that series. I'm Matt Harris, News 88.7.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Good morning. Thanks for joining us here on News 88.7 and Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. Coming up this hour, this week's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and we preview the latest installment in the Museum of Fine Arts Houston's Movies Houstonians Love series. First, though, Houston area Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher says President Trump suing his government, appointing his lawyer to head the DOJ, then settling the lawsuit for what she calls a slush fund, is a perversion of our system of justice. That is why last week she introduced a bill that would block this or any president from taking such action in the future. And it comes as we have news this morning that a federal judge has temporarily blocked the president's administration from paying any claims through that settlement fund. We'll talk about it as we go here. Congresswoman Fletcher, welcome to Houston Matters.
Thanks, Craig. I'm glad to be with you, as always.
I guess first I should lay out what this is all about, and then we can get into some of the specifics here. So the U.S. Justice Department is led by Acting Attorney General and former Private Trump Attorney Todd Blanche. And the DOJ recently announced the creation of a nearly $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund, established as part of a settlement of President Trump's $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS over a leak of his tax returns. Again, that settlement, it appears at the moment, is on hold because a federal judge has blocked it, at least temporarily, as of just this morning, just minutes ago, in fact. This is the news coming out. According to the DOJ, this is designed to compensate people who claim they were unfairly targeted by the government under the Biden administration. That could include those convicted in connection with the January 6th, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. President Trump has since pardoned many of those convicted. Okay, that's the basics.
Yeah.
Why do you see this fund as a problem that requires a legislative remedy, never mind what the courts may ultimately do?
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Craig. It's always good to be with you, and I think this is a really important thing to be talking about. We obviously were sitting here when we just got the news about the temporary injunction from the court, kind of putting this on pause. But I think what we have seen over the last year and a half in the second Trump administration is really graft and corruption unlike anything we have ever seen before in this country. And some of it, right, is just already illegal, unlawful, and we need accountability for that. And a lot of those things are making their way through the courts, and the courts are a really important piece of this. But some of it is unimaginable. And I would put this settlement in that category, that the President of the United States would sue the United States, that people would ask questions about whether you really have adverse parties when the Department of Justice defending the lawsuit from the president, his companies, his children, over the release of the tax returns, which has been dealt with, by the way. There's somebody who is in jail for having done that, or was sentenced. I don't know the status today, but like this played out in the past. They've now come and said, we are damaged to the tune of $10 billion. They're suing the taxpayers of the United States, you and me, for this. And they were not the only people involved in this release as well. It wasn't, that's a point, it's not critical to it, but the idea that the president would sue for $10 billion, and people would question that, right, whether these are really adverse parties. And so they'd say, okay, we've reached a settlement. They didn't file the settlement in court and dismissed their lawsuit, but kind of used the legal process to say, okay, well, we need to have a settlement here of this claim from the president against the United States, right? No president has done that before. We're not talking about presidents appearing in court in some perfunctory manner or protecting the role of the presidency. What we're talking about is a completely self-serving lawsuit, and the settlement involves multiple things, including preventing the IRS from ever auditing President Trump or his family or his companies again, right, into the future. We know there was a case in New York whether they had made material misrepresentations about finances, right? So the idea that they're blocked, the IRS is blocked from ever questioning any of this, and potentially outstanding funds owed to the United States. And then there's this creation of what is essentially a slush fund. Nearly $1.8 billion that the president says he's going to give out to his friends and allies. And that includes everybody from, as you mentioned, people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. I was inside the Capitol on January 6th, 2021. I saw what happened with my own eyes. And there's a lot of revisionist history going around, but there are people who were convicted of assaulting Capitol police officers. Capitol police officers died on January 6th and then the days after. And we have seen this administration try to pretend like that didn't happen and like it was something other than what it was. But you've also seen, I mean, other people have said that they feel targeted by the Biden administration. Like the MyPillow guy has said that he thinks that his business went down and that was because of, something with the Biden administration, and he's going to seek funds potentially. You saw the president's lawyer, Todd Blanche, go to the Senate last week and say that potentially U.S. senators could collect from this fund. I mean, this is graft and corruption at a scale that you and I and most Americans could not imagine. And so we need, to answer your question, we need a law that says you cannot do this. And this law is so straightforward. I mean, it's a page long. I have it up in front of me. But basically, it just says the president cannot sue the United States for this kind of personal injury when he's controlling he or she. I mean, this applies to future presidents. This is not limited to President Trump. But no one would have imagined that this would have happened. And I think that that's where we need a real legislative response. It doesn't say, well, we didn't think this would happen, to this cannot happen. And that, I think, is a really important piece of where we are, because we need accountability for where the law is currently being broken, and we need to have new legislation. This is not unlike probably what we saw after Watergate, where we need a series of reforms that come in, and there are a litany of things, and we can talk about them, where we need to think differently about what we have expected people to do and kind of norms, the way we expected presidents to behave, the way we expected elected officials to behave, and what's actually the law. And we need stricter laws to make sure that we are not abusing the system the way that we have this unchecked abuse from the Trump administration. That while Americans are struggling to put gas in the car and to buy groceries and to pay rent or to pay their mortgages, President Trump wants to hand out cash to people that support him and wants to use our money to do it. And one thing I just want to add, but it's coming out of the judgment fund. That's where cases brought against the United States come, and that's things like
this is a fund set up in the Treasury Department by Congress back in the 1950s to help pay legal judgments and settlements involving the federal government.
Right.
So how, in your view, does this settlement undermine that purpose?
Well, it's not that it undermines the purpose of the judgment fund, which is to pay legitimate settlements, which this is not, right? So right there, this is not a legitimate settlement. But there are legitimate settlements. And for example, you know who stands to get money out of that fund? Are the people here in Houston who have sued the United States government for damage from Hurricane Harvey. So they're depleting the judgment fund to pay out January 6th insurrectionists, to pay out Trump's friends and allies, while homeowners whose houses flooded, who have sued the government and spent years suing both upstream and downstream, have now gotten judgments. And if they were to settle those cases or pay judgments against the government in those cases, they come out of this settlement fund. And so that's what it's supposed to be used for. And that's an adversarial process that has gone on for years. Having the president direct his former personal lawyer to ink a settlement with the United States with that not only have the judge in the case questioned it, and then they dismissed the case before the judge could approve or deny the settlement, because that happens a lot, right? When there's a settlement, often it goes before the court. The court either says, yes, the settlement is okay, or no, it's not. That did not happen in this case. And you have, I think there were 35 former federal judges that tried to intervene yesterday. We, of course, have the court now issuing at least a temporary stay today. And so, you know, everyone who sees this knows that it's wrong in a million different ways, and it undermines the legitimacy of real cases.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, so there was this bipartisan group of former federal judges, I think it's 35, who filed suit in Florida calling for this lawsuit to be reopened and the settlement rejected. You joined 92 colleagues filing a friend of the court brief calling for the settlement to be blocked. So clearly a judge in a different court came to the same conclusion, as we said, has temporarily blocked it as of this morning. Is there, though, any value in reopening a case if you believe the settlement and the lawsuit itself is fraudulent, that the president is essentially negotiating with himself?
Well, look, I think we need to use every tool that we have to stop it from happening. So whether that is reopening this case and rejecting the settlement, which the court should have the power to do, whether it is filing different suits. But, you know, what we've seen over the years is that sort of taxpayers have limited ability to sue. And that's for a variety of reasons. But so who can sue? Who can bring a case against us? That's why we need to use all the tools. We need to challenge it in the courts. We need to challenge it in Congress, and we need to pass this law and others. There are a lot of other things that are out there that we should be considering, and frankly, that don't need to be new laws, but Congress needs to conduct some oversight of this administration, and that has not been happening either. And one of the things that I feel like I've just been screaming at the top of my lungs for a while now, Craig, is that this Congress is not doing its job. You know, the last time we talked, I talked about that. I think that we have seen Congress abdicate its responsibility completely, whether it comes to, and the Trump administration has been ignoring Congress unless it wants Congress to rubber stamp something it's doing. And that's what you see from this Congress with Mike Johnson as the Speaker of the House and the Republicans in charge of the House and the Senate. They will not cross this president. And he's created an atmosphere, and you saw that over the last couple of weeks. He's created an atmosphere that makes it hard for them to do. And that's why, of course, when I'm, you know, not in my official office and I have my other hat on, I'm telling people we need to elect Democrats and have Democrats take back the House so we can have some accountability and we can have oversight, because so many things are happening, Craig. Dismantling important programs, defunding important programs. We see that here in Houston for sure, whether it's cutting scientific research and NIH funding, whether it's cutting science research and cutting the National Weather Service that's predicting hurricanes and doing forecasting and informing us and keeping us safe during hurricane season and year round. Whether we see attempts to cut, certainly they've passed legislation to cut food assistance, right? And cutting our health care, right? And so we have seen from the big legislation that passed last summer, tremendous cuts to health care. And like I said earlier, people are struggling to afford things. This Congress is making it worse, not better. And they're not challenging the actions the administration is taking, like the tariffs and other things. They're just letting it go.
I want to talk more about that in just a minute. We're chatting with Houston area Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher. She's a Democrat representing the 7th Congressional District, and she has introduced a bill designed to bar U.S. presidents from filing civil lawsuits against their own government and then using the Treasury Department's judgment fund to settle those suits. Just this morning, U.S. District Judge Leonie Brinkema in Alexandria, Virginia, temporarily blocked President Trump's administration from paying any claims through the settlement fund. We'll talk about more with the Congresswoman. Welcome your questions as well at 713-440-8870 or talk at HoustonMatters.org. As Houston Matters continues on News 88.7 and YouTube.
Turn left. Fuel the news you trust and become a new member today. I'm talking to you. You're here with us every day, and we need you to take the next step and make that gift to Houston Public Media. We need to get to 200 new members by Friday to unlock $10,000. This is an amazing time to become a new member. Do that now at HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate.
Support
comes from Metro. World Cup planning includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Baylor College of Medicine. Baylor's work centers on advancing health and medicine through research, education, and patient care.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. We are talking with Houston area Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher about a bill she's introduced to block presidents from suing their own government and then settling the suit by using a Treasury Department fund. She calls it a slush fund and a perversion of our system of justice. Just this morning, a federal judge temporarily blocked a settlement that would allow President Trump to use the fund in that way. We welcome your questions and comments at 713-440-8870 or talk at HoustonMatters.org. Before the break, you were talking about how frustrated you were by the Congress you are currently in, that it is not holding the president in check in the ways that you would like to see it do so. Of course, it's an election year. Of course, you are in the minority party. Democrats do not have control of either house. So there's a certain amount of, this is promoting what you think Congress should do should Democrats regain control of the House or the Senate. Some of this is about the election year. That said, one of the questions that keeps coming up is, at what point will congressional Republicans specifically push back on the president? And in particular, when it comes to things where they clearly disagree with him, or at least it seems we hear behind the scenes they disagree with him. So now let's apply this to this bill that you've introduced. Do you have any Republicans who have publicly stated, I'll support that?
So I don't have any Republican co-sponsors on my bill yet, but we have reached out to some Republican colleagues. I mean, this should be bipartisan, right? Because it's not just about or limited to President Trump. It's certainly about what he has just done, because, like I said, I think this was unimaginable to most of us. There is a different bipartisan bill that my colleague Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania has introduced with Tom Suozzi from New York. So there is a bipartisan bill that's a little bit different, but aims at checking this. And in fact, Craig, I mean, I'm hopeful. Look, we've got some glimmers of hope that at the end of last week, we were supposed to be in session through Friday, and we were supposed to vote on the next version of this reconciliation bill. They want to put more funding into ICE and Customs and Border Protection, and that was supposed to be moving through the Senate, when in addition to the slush fund, you had all of a sudden the president demanding $1 billion for his ballroom, which is a whole other series of issues. Not only did he say it would be sort of privately funded, which raises a lot of potential corruption issues too, sort of the way that he said that Mexico would pay for the wall, right? He's saying there's going to be a privately funded ballroom, and now he wants $1 billion from Congress to build this ballroom. And, it couldn't be further from the priorities of the vast majority of Americans, right? Who, like I said, are trying to deal with increasing gas prices and dealing with inflation and dealing with grocery prices, housing, all these challenges that we have. I don't know anyone who's supporting or saying our priority needs to be building this ballroom. But so those two things at the end of last week stymied the Senate Republicans enough that they left town without sending the House this reconciliation bill. And there was some pushback. As I mentioned earlier, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche went to the Senate Republicans' lunch meeting and said basically, hey, don't worry about this fund. You guys can collect from it, more or less. I wasn't there, but that's the reporting that came out of it. And so you do see there's at least hesitation. And look, the Senate, the Republicans are poised to lose the majority in the Senate, too. Everybody thinks that's a heavier lift as we sort of, talk election year stuff. That's tougher probably than taking back the House. But with things like this, those senators become concerned. And, of course, you also have senators objecting who now are kind of freed up to do that. You have Senator Cassidy in Louisiana. see what Senator Cornyn does following this week's election result and whether he stands up to President Trump. I mean, he should know better. He's been a Supreme Court justice. He's been attorney in Texas, and he's been a senator for a long time. And so there are some who are starting to speak up.
Yeah, but there's also a big difference between speaking up, again, behind the scenes or even publicly, and voting publicly.
Absolutely. And when it comes time to vote, the Republicans fall in line, and they're giving the president what he wants. They're not standing up for their constituents. They're not standing up for the Constitution, and they're not standing up for the Congress as the first branch of government that is supposed to declare war, right? That has been an issue throughout the spring that we've talked about before.
But that's also not really anything new. We've seen that in past administrations.
To some extent, but not to this extent. And certainly when you are in the political party that's in the majority and your president is in the White House, you want to work together to get things done. But there's a difference between doing whatever the president says and fearing and using the president of the United States as the majority whip, which has happened over and over and over again, that the president is calling in and telling the Republican members of Congress how they have to vote and the consequences for not doing it. And that's where you see reports and a lot of people leaving because they fear the consequences of crossing the president. And look, of course, we expect that oftentimes we have aligned priorities. But when you see things like the abuses that are happening, and there is, you were asking about sort of bipartisan agreement, the one place where I think you've seen bipartisan efforts, and I think we should see more of them, is when it comes to something like the Epstein files. And we know Attorney General Bondi is testifying before the Judiciary Committee behind closed doors today without video. But the House Oversight Committee has pushed on the release of the Epstein files. And I think that's what we should be doing. Why hasn't this government, the president campaigned on releasing the Epstein files.
Forgive me for interrupting you, but a question on our YouTube channel. Outside of the settlement fund issue, as person writes, is there a way to prevent the terms of the settlement that exempt President Trump and his family from current and future IRS audits? Can you separate that out?
I don't know if you can separate it out except to challenge the settlement, right? And so can you go back? Can a future Justice Department or future IRS go ahead and audit and find themselves in another lawsuit saying, hey, there's a settlement, and get the settlement thrown out then? But that, typically in legal cases, you can reach settlement agreements and they go to the court for approval. That happens in those big class actions, when you get a postcard in the mail that says you're entitled to get, between $5 and $10 because something happened, right? There are a lot of big cases like that go to court, and the court approves the settlement, and then those funds get paid out. There's certainly private settlements that get reached in lawsuits. Obviously, I was a lawyer before I got to Congress dealing with cases that go to trial, and a lot of cases do settle. But in those cases, you have a real adversity of the parties. You can't sue yourself. And that's effectively what we're seeing here. So I think the question is a good one. I don't know the answer to how you parcel that out, but I think that we have to try. We have to try to do everything we can to address this, as well as the other blatant corruption we're seeing. I mean, the reports this week about the president's stock trades and buying and selling an inordinate amount of stocks, unlike any other president. I mean, if you look back, going back to George H.W. Bush and Clinton and Obama and George W. Bush and Joe Biden, nothing like this happened.
He's got a lot more money than they do.
That's not the issue, though. The issue is, President Clinton and President Bush put everything into blind trust. President Biden didn't trade anything, and Presidents Obama and George W. Bush put all of their whatever money they had into kind of these publicly traded funds that you can't control. What you see with President Trump is that he's going out and buying stocks in areas that he has control. He was buying defense stocks earlier this year. And now, this whole thing about the Dell stock, and then he went out and was telling people to buy Dell computers. And then this week,